Hey parents, it's Toby back again to talk to you about some issues that are near and dear to my heart. So this week, I was talking about planning and having a plan A, B, C, and sometimes having a plan D. And being a single parent, I think you always have to think in terms of contingency plans, but then also two-parent households, you always have to think of terms of contingency plans for yourself and for your kids and your family. So this week will be pretty short. I've just got a few examples of things that helped me out and why I thought they were important. So first of all, for the most part, it was just me. I did have a great support group of people that were around to help, but as the primary parent for my son, I was the person that was making the decisions, and then also the person with the schedule that had to be worked around, or the schedule that had to have contingency plans for or backups for. I couldn't necessarily, I couldn't automatically say that I had this other person that I knew with 100% certainty would be there if I wasn't, or that would drop everything to do something if I couldn't. So I was always plan A. So whatever I was doing, I was plan A, but I also had to have a B and a C. And so examples of that would be, I had transportation, I had a car, but not always the best car. So usually if I was working somewhere, I would try to identify someone that lived in the general vicinity that I did and approach that person to say, hey, if something ever comes up and I, need a ride, would you be able to help out with that? And of course I would, compensate them for gas and make sure that I was early. I didn't want to interfere with their time or things that they might have to do, but I would try to identify someone that I worked with that could be my plan B as far as transportation. And then I always, as a C, would know the bus route. There were many days where I would take the bus where I needed to go if I didn't have a car. So, so as far as transportation goes, I had my A, B, and my C. And there were times too where like a family member would step in if I needed to use a car or borrow a car or something like that. But for the most part, it was me setting up those contingency plans for myself to make sure that I could get to work when I needed to. And at times I mentioned where I worked multiple jobs. And that was always kind of tricky because there were some times when I was working multiple jobs that I needed to catch a ride or catch the bus to get to that job. And so you always have to have contingency plans lined up. And I that's been something that's been kind of interesting to me just over the years, talking to people where if something happens, it completely throws them out of sync. Some emergency comes up or something happens and they just stop. Everything has to stop. They just feel like the whole situation is over. It's a dead issue because something's happened and they can't see past that one thing. And so then I'm always like, well, but have you tried this, or can you do that? Or if this didn't work, can you go this route? And I actually stopped doing that with some people because, my mind didn't stop at that one event that happened that didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. My mind doesn't stop there. I would always think of alternate plans to get you back on track, maybe not in the exact places you want it to be, but still moving forward. And I actually had to stop saying that, asking those questions to some people, because they would get annoyed by that and say, why are you pressing me? Or you think you know everything, or, it's a done deal. And they would get annoyed by the fact that I was trying to help them come up with alternate plans. And so some people were okay with that. Others were not. So those people, if they tell me something's happened, then I just assume they want me to listen. And that's what I do. I listen. I don't try to help them come up with alternate plans or help them problem solve their way through whatever the issue is. And just people are wired differently, and I have to respect that. And it took me a while to even realize that what I was saying wasn't helpful. that it was more frustrating to that person, and that I just needed to listen. And that, was born of years of me figuring things out on my own. And I'm like, okay, well, I can share this with someone. And a lot of people don't want you to share that. So some people I do and some people I don't. And now I'm sharing it with you guys today. So, and you might be ones that want to listen or ones that say, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. So there were other things that I had to figure out, as far as like daycare issues. Again, I was plan A, but of course I worked and I was in school. So I was fortunate that, when my son was born, those first 6 months, I was at home with him. And then after that, my middle sister was there. So, she would take him when I had to go to school. So that was fine. And then, as he got older and was time for him to start going to school, I got him in daycare. And then when he was, in elementary school, his, paternal great grandmother lived in the same district that I did. And so I, he would catch the bus at my house and then, get off the bus at her house, and I would pick him up after work. So that was just a huge blessing for me to have those backups. But I still had to have a contingency plan because she was elderly. Sometimes she just wasn't up to him being there, or maybe if he was sick and couldn't even go to school that day, what was my backup plan? And I was, again, very fortunate that I had, my first boss, my first real job was, a really lovely woman who had for a time been a single parent herself before she got remarried. So she understood a lot of the things that I was going through, and that in my personal life that I tried to keep away from there. I never let her know if I was struggling or if something was happening. All she needed to know was that I could get to work on time every day. And I remember, an occasion that came up where, I came into work maybe like 45 minutes late. And it had just been one of those mornings where I was tired from the night before. Randall wasn't feeling well, but he wasn't sick enough that he needed to stay home. But we were just moving slow. I couldn't get him dressed. He was fidgety. It was just one of those mornings I'm sure you guys have experienced. And so I got to work late, and I came in and I tried the old flat tire excuse, and she recognized what it was right away, and she set me down. She's like, look, Toby, I've been there. I know how it can be. Don't ever lie to me. Just call me or say, hey, I'm running late, or this has happened, or Randall's sick or whatever, but don't ever lie. Don't ever come in and lie to me, because I've been there, and maybe it's something I can help you with. Maybe I can't. Maybe you'll get in trouble for coming in late. Maybe you won't, but this definitely isn't the route you want to take with me. And I was so appreciative. I was so appreciative of her saying that to me and calling me on my crap, because I needed to hear that. And I didn't want to set up a bad precedent of doing that, and then of having, of reacting the way that I did, to panic and just blurt the first thing out that popped into my head. And that really was a great lesson for me that I use even today, about honesty and transparency, and being, at work or in your private life, having those conversations with people so that they know where you're coming from. And she really taught me a huge lesson that day. And we really didn't have any issues after that, because that also let me know, was part of the impetus for me having these contingency plans, is after this incident happened, then I needed to do better with my time management. So we didn't really have any issues after that. I do recall, one day he got hurt at school and had to have stitches. And so I took off from work, of course, to do that. And then after we left the emergency room, I went back to the office to get all of my stuff so that I can take him home and work from home. So there were things that came up like that. And, again, I was keeping her abreast of what was happening, so that, I just didn't leave. And then all of a sudden I'm not there. She doesn't know what's happening or anything. So I'm kind of going in different directions, but the main thing that I want to express today is that you do have to have backup plans, whether that's people, processes, or places. You have to have backup and contingency plans. You have to have backup transportation. You have to have backup childcare. If you have a sitter and your sitter's sick, what are you going to do? And these are even for, two-parent homes. Sometimes I've seen couples get into disagreements because one is expecting the other to have taken care of something, or they're thinking the other one isn't pulling pulling their weight, doing their fair share. But then I look and I wonder, have you actually sat down as a couple and talked about what that fair share looks like? And then as a couple, have you talked about what's our backup plan if neither of us are available and can do this? And oftentimes, just from the outside looking in, I don't know if those conversations are being had. I don't know if couples go in and consciously sit down and talk about what we're bringing to the table and what our backup contingency plans will be if we're not available. And I don't say that about everyone, because I know that I have been people's backup plans before. I've got friends now that have a little boy, and these two, for all of my 8 subscribers, just between us, these two I honestly think fight over who's going to pick him up. They are just so devoted to this little boy. But I'm their backup person if neither of them can pick their son up from school. I guarantee that's never going to happen, because like I said, they fight every day for who will pick him up. But if for some reason either of them can't, I'm their backup person. And I remember when my cousin worked where we lived, it was like an hour and 20-minute train ride to Chicago, and she worked in Chicago. So she would bring her daughter to my house every morning and I would get her ready for school, and take her and my son to school, and then get them after school, and she would stay at my house until her mom got off the train. So I was her backup plan. And so that again affected and I don't want that, doing that, being her backup plan affected my plans, because now I had to worry about 2 kids that I had to have backup plans for if my plans B or C did not come to fruition. So that got a little bit even more complicated, because I was somebody else's backup plan. It affected my backup plans, and it worked. We made it work. It was fine. But you always have to have a contingency, even financially. And I've run into this struggle lots of times, is having a little slush fund, because somebody's going to get sick. Some emergency bill is going to pop up. And do you have, even $50 in a little envelope or drawer somewhere where if you need a prescription filled really quick, you can go to this little money and get this prescription filled? And I have really tried to maintain a little slush fund. Sometimes it's zero, other times it's adequate. It's never where I want it to be. So that's something that I still do work on, because with kids, especially when they get older and they're involved in sports, but just in general, for prescriptions and other little things you might want to do with them, take them to the movies, you have to have a little bit of a slush fund so that you can do those things. And that should be part of your plan A, B, C, and D. Because plan A is the basics. Plan B is if they get sick. Plan C is if they need clothes or shoes. And then D is if you want to take them to the movies. So you've got to figure out what your plans are for each of those contingencies, just like you have to figure out your plans for your transportation and for their childcare issues. So I always, when I talk to people and they say this one thing didn't work out, and I'm so disappointed that this one thing happened and it did not happen the way I wanted it to. Okay, let's absorb that. That happened. It was terrible. Now what? And that's what, even when I talk to my son now, I'm like, all right, okay, that happened. let's absorb it. Now what? And he's used to me saying that to him. Now what? And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck or anything. I'm saying, okay, that happened. Let's get over it. Let's move forward. How are we going to move forward? What's your plan? What's your contingency plan? Or maybe you already had a contingency plan set up. I have to do that every day at work. I had someone call to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take this job. My boss is going to ask me, now what? So I have to tell him, which I did Friday at like 4 o'clock when this person says, oh, I'm not going to report to work on Monday. I had 2 people on standby that were interested, but because we thought the position had been filled, they hadn't been in yet for an interview. So I called those 2 people. They're coming in for interviews this week to work on filling this new slot. And he was fine with that. He was like, great, I like to see a plan in place. That's exactly what he said to me. So you think about that in just so many avenues of your life. And sometimes I write them down, what my plan A, B, and C are, so that I don't forget, or so if I need to make adjustments to them, I can. And when my conversation with people, I often will ask them or try to help them problem solve through plans A, B, and C. Like I said, some people are receptive to that, some people aren't. But I just think it's so important to have multiple contingencies. My mom used to always say, plan for the, what did she say? Plan for the worst, expect the best, or maybe it's the other way around. But she, that's probably where I got it from, because she always believed in backup plans and contingency plans. When you have a family, or if you're single, you just have to have it. You cannot get away with just being inside of a box. You have to have ways outside to get out of that box. So that's basically, what I wanted to share today is some experience that I've had with having to develop plans, how I've been the plan for other people, and that just how important it is, in my opinion, that you do have backup plans and contingency plans for every avenue of your life, but especially if you have children, because at their young, tender ages, they don't know plan from A, B, or Z. They have no clue. They just know that they're looking to you to have figured this stuff out for them, and you can't both be sitting there looking crazy. So that's what I have for you today. I've got a new follower this week, so I'm up to 9. So thank you guys, and people that have watched the video so far. I hope you're getting something out of it. I'd still love to see some questions or some suggestions on topics at the bottom of the screen there. And please, if you're new, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell so you get the alerts when the new ones come out. And that's all for this week. And remember, we are more than society says we are, and more than the statistics that are subscribed to us. So thank you, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.